It's the end of the day on DS9, and Sisko's dealing with one of Quark's schemes before he can finally get to bed. The universe has other ideas, as once that's taken care of, O'Brien wants a word. Well, I say word, but what he actually wants is to point a weapon at Sisko and kidnap him, and I note it's a distinctly non-Federation sidearm. He waves a distinctly non-Federation gizmo over a console, and they teleport onto a distinctly non-Federation ship. For a distinctly non-Federation ship, this cargo room looks a lot like a redressed set of the Defiant's crew quarters, which might be why Sisko feels comfortable enough to disarm O'Brien. Except it's not O'Brien, at least not ours. This is evil O'Brien from the alternate universe Kira and Bashir got stuck in last season, which is why disarming him doesn't mean squat. Sisko's not getting back home until evil O'Brien does a science to their teleporter, and he's not going to do that without filling us all in on some backstory first. The adventures of Kira and Bashir a year ago resulted in the downtrodden humans starting up a Terran rebellion against their Cardigan and Klingon oppressors. Evil Sisko was the head of that rebellion, and I say was because he's gone and done a dead. And that's a problem for evil O'Brien and the rest of the rebellion, as evil Sisko was on a very important mission when he got kaboomed. There's a scientist making a new bit of scanning tech for their enemies, and that'll mean they can't hide in the Badlands anymore, and likely result in them all being wiped out. All of which doesn't mean much to Sisko until he finds out who the scientist is. Meet evil Jennifer, wife of evil Sisko, and the alternate universe version of Sisko's dead wife. If he can't convince her to cut out all of this scanner nonsense and join the rebellion, evil O'Brien says they'll have no choice but to kill her. Up on Terok Nor, evil Jennifer is reporting to evil Kira. It's not just to find out how the new scanner is working, but also to let her know that her husband, evil Sisko, just got blown up a bit by a Cardigan ship. Such needless loss of life will, of course, be a thing of the past once she completes her work and the rebellion is stopped. After all, evil Kira has said as much. It's showtime for Sisko, and he's being led into a meeting of rebellion members. We've got a few recognizable faces with evil Rom and evil Bashir, and a little surprise with evil Tuvok. I guess both versions of him ended up joining terrorist organizations, though for somewhat different reasons. They're all currently arguing about how to proceed after the news of evil Sisko's death, something which gets understandably derailed when Sisko walks in. Evil Bashir doesn't seem too chuffed to see him, though evil Dax is apparently delighted. It would seem that evil Sisko and evil Jennifer were not exactly happily married. Evil Dax wants to show how glad she is to see him a bit more, which is going to give us some very unpleasant stuff to talk about in the analysis, so let's leave it there and check on evil Kira. She's busy ordering the executions of some random workers to motivate the others, though plain evil Garak thinks this might have more to do with the reported death of evil Sisko. Evil Kira had quite the soft spot for him according to rumour, though she denies it. I imagine pointing a gun at her the last time we saw them together might have soured things a little. Back to Sisko we go, and evil Dax is trying to convince him to abandon all this rebellion stuff and scarper with her. He's as uninterested in that as he is with evil Bashir telling him he should kill evil Jennifer, and some prompting by evil O'Brien has Sisko play the part properly by knocking evil Bashir on his arse. She's much more useful alive, says evil O'Brien, and nobody fancies arguing the point after seeing what just happened. Nobody fancies arguing to his face at least, as it would appear that evil Rom doesn't agree with him either. That's due to him being a spy for evil Kira though, and he tells her that the death of evil Sisko has been greatly exaggerated, along with the best way to capture him. Sisko and evil O'Brien are back on the ship, and the latter is scratching something behind his ear just to let we viewers know that there are shenanigans afoot. A talk about how evil Jennifer won't be the same as Sisko's dead wife gets cut short by some uncloaking Klingon and Cardigan ships, so I guess the alliance is strong enough for them to be sharing tech. They're both brought to Terok Nor, where Sisko wastes no time leaning into the role he's playing. It's the right choice, apparently, and while O'Brien is taken to work in the refinery, Sisko is instead escorted to evil Kira's quarters. Plain evil Garak doesn't like that choice, but evil Kira tells him to bollocks. Not that Sisko's safe, of course. Evil Kira just wants to be the one to decide when he dies. At least he gets a chance to speak to evil Jennifer. It's not an easy conversation, as it would appear that evil Sisko was a complete and utter dick, though she's thrown by the news that he's here to rescue her. She at least seems willing to accept that she's a prisoner here, and that the Klingon Cardigan Alliance isn't her friend, so that's something. Sisko fiddles with a gizmo behind his ear, which turns out to be a communicator implanted under the skin. That's Evil O'Brien's cue to start whatever they have planned, and Sisko murderizes one guard, then knocks out another. This display, apparently, is enough to make Evil Jennifer open to the idea of a little scarpering, albeit after making things very clear that she still thinks he's a complete wanker. While they leg it, Evil O'Brien is dicking about with machinery. He twats the guard who investigates, then shoots another after things start kabooming. I suppose having a worker revolt at the same time as his escape makes for a handy distraction. Sisko and Evil Jennifer have a little trouble on the way to a docking port so they can scarp her, but nothing Evil O'Brien can't fix when he turns up. The secondary bit of trouble is a touch more difficult to solve, as Evil Rom's corpse is strung up in front of the docking bay door with a knife rammed into it. It was all part of the plan, you see, to have Evil Rom betray them as a way of getting them onto the station. Evil Kira admits she was completely taken in by the idea, but plain Evil Garak has a more devious mind, and was able to get the truth from him. Eventually, anyway. That leaves Sisko and company in a bit of a bind, though he does have an idea and they leg it to the mining area. Evil O'Brien seals them in as Sisko starts fiddling with a console. There's no resistance when Evil Kira and company break in shortly afterwards. There doesn't need to be, Sisko's already holding an ace. See, he gambled that this Terok Nor would be similar enough to Deep Space Nine that it would have the same command codes, which feels like a stretch for some reasons we'll go into, but let's ignore that for now. What did he use the command codes for? Why, to turn on the self-destruct, of course. He's changed the code, obviously, so Evil Kira can't just turn it off again, and he says he'll hand it back over to her once he's safely scarpered with everybody else. Plain Evil Garak thinks he's bluffing, but Evil Kira believes otherwise and lets him go, albeit with the promise to murderize the shit out of him when she finally manages to catch him. We're safely back in the Terran Rebellion's base. Evil Dax and Evil Jennifer are chatting when Sisko walks in, though Evil Dax seems considerably less pleased to see him this time and leaves. Perhaps that could be explained by her conversation with Evil Jennifer, depending on how much she shared. See, Evil Jennifer has figured out that Sisko isn't her husband. Sisko doesn't go into the details, probably because we've only got a minute or so left of the episode, and instead tells her to talk to Evil O'Brien. She seems okay with the situation anyway, perhaps because she's not a prisoner anymore. She thanks him for the rescue and Sisko buggers off to get teleported home, so we'll leave her to adapt to her new life in a cave until the next adventure. Let's get it out of the way then and discuss that scene between Evil Dax and Sisko. We should probably throw up a content warning here because we're going to be discussing sexual assault. There's a bar at the bottom of the screen now for those who wish to skip to the analysis of other aspects of this story. There exists in the laws of many countries the concept of rape by deception. There are a lot of different aspects to this, but we're going to focus specifically on two people engaging in sexual activity where one person mistook the identity of the other. Now, I obviously haven't had months to explore the issue, but the time I've been able to use shows the question of rape by deception is as complicated as it is difficult to convict. That being said, the defenses I've read about involve there being some doubt as to whether the participant knew they were being mistaken for someone else rather than believed they were the intended partner. In reality, this is obviously a complete bastard to prove in court, but the legal principle is very clear, so we can apply it here. We know for a fact that Sisko has no such confusion in this case. We know for a fact that he's fully and completely aware that he was not the person she consented to have sex with. As a result, there are legal jurisdictions on this planet where Benjamin Sisko would now be considered a sex offender. Before the vocal minority rushes to the comments to call it woke gone mad, or whatever terminology we're using for not being a scumbag this week, understand that this is not simply a moral judgment by me. It is a factual one, based on the laws of multiple nations. If you got a problem with that, maybe your time would be better spent looking at a mirror instead of a screen. It's not the first time that Trek has missed the mark, and it won't be the last, but it's a pretty fucking big one. The whole scene and its implications leave a sour taste in the mouth that sully the entire story. The fact that it was such an utterly unnecessary addition in the first place, one that affects the story in no meaningful manner whatsoever, only adds insult. Let's move on, and I've got some serious doubts about the plan Sisko pulls out of his arse at the end of the episode. Sisko's plan assumes that he knows the command codes for Terok Nor. To be clear, that's not the command codes for Deep Space Nine, but the codes that existed on Terok Nor before Starfleet came in. That in turn would require the Cardigans, a people obsessed with security and secrets, to have not bothered changing their codes before buggering off or even destroying the whole system. It would also require the Cardigans to be using the same code format that Starfleet do, a mix of letters, numbers and colours, and that's before we ask why the Cardigans would be using a phonetic system containing a fair portion of the Greek alphabet, something created on Earth about 3,000 years ago. It would also require there to be no biometric or voice recognition requirement prior to priming a system designed to destroy the entire station. I can imagine Starfleet security being so utterly dogshit, based purely on the number of shuttle thefts we saw on Voyager, but the Cardigans? That just doesn't scan for me. We're talking about a people who we know created automated anti-uprising systems. We could argue these Cardigans are different, of course, but that butts up against them being so similar that the codes are identical. You can't have it both ways. Let's put all of that out of our minds, though, and focus on the story. It's mixed, I guess would be the best description. I'm not against exploring just how much our actions have affected the balance of power in an alternate universe, if only for an example of how things can go down the shitter when we ignore the Prime Directive. Not that the lesson has been learned, it seems, as Sisko does it again here, though you could argue that's an attempt to correct the original incursion by Kirk. I think the issue is that now the Mirror Universe is an ongoing concern, it's caught in the same trap as Trek in general. They're afraid to change too much of it. Save for the death of Evil Rom, this story ends with maintaining the status quo that the previous Mirror episode created. Speaking of which, the same problems as I complained about in the previous Mirror Universe episode drag things down again. That frankly boring use of sexuality is an indicator of evil, and we have a little queer phobia thrown in for good measure now too. To be fair, Nana Visitor herself has spoken out about evil Kira being written that way during a time when queer representation was pretty dogshit. As I've said previously, showing such ignorance in an otherwise progressive show is one of Trek's largest failures, and that's something Gene Roddenberry himself acknowledged before his death. Another complaint for the episode is the inclusion of Tuvok, or to be more precise, the pointless inclusion of Tuvok. His presence here didn't add anything at all, and smells like exactly what it is, a crossover for promotional purposes rather than something to improve the narrative. Frankly, Tim Russ deserved better than just to be trotted out for a few unimportant lines. Overall then, I can't say I was a fan, and that's a shame. The inclusion of evil Jennifer could have made for some potentially very difficult decisions for Sisko, but so many other things drag it down that we never get the chance to see anything come of it. End of episode.
So what we're gonna do with 3 bars of latinum?
Bribe Odo?
What you on about? He's incorruptible.
That's certainly the image he likes to portray.
Yeah, well, everybody knows he is.
Yes, it's excellent cover, isn't it?
Are you saying you know something different?
Well, how many times have you seen him seize contraband?
Well, there's been a fair few now, yeah.
And where's the secure room in the security office to store it?
It's, around the corner. I don't know.
No, because there isn't one.
Maybe he puts it in a cargo bay.
With how he feels about Starfleet security?
Yeah, fair point. Are you really saying Odo's bent?
I'm saying that the chief of security being so pally with the station's most prolific smuggler, and the things he confiscates never being seen again, may not be entirely unconnected. Woof.